Seattle radio talk show host, joining me now. Often we get together and we talk about the problems that got us here. Today, the focus in the Senate hearing is how do we get out of it?
It seems pretty simple. You can protect cops by rolling back laws or policies that make their jobs more dangerous, jobs that are already dangerous. You put a ban on pursuits, or you have severe restrictions on use of force. And folks know that. Criminals know that. When you have prosecutors who refuse to offer sentencing enhancements for gang members or for the use of guns or even in drive-bys, that has an impact. You should bring back cash bail so we can keep some of these criminals in jail where they belong, and stop pretending that the Democrat Party hasn't actually been pushing for defunding. I'm sorry, but that Senator Durbin clip is so dishonest. That is a flat-out lie. The Democratic Party is the only party that had promoted the defunding of police and, in a lot of ways, the abolition of police and prisons. You cannot pretend that that wasn't the case. You cannot continue to gaslight us and tell us that we're the delusional ones. You have to fully fund police departments, because at the end of the day, they have to be able to protect themselves and the community, and when they are understaffed, they can't do either.
You know what? My team has been able to pull some of what was just said at the Senate hearing. And I just want people to understand the rawness and the riveting nature of what police are going through right now and their understanding of how we got here. This is Sergeant Trey Penne. He is the president and executive director, National Fallen Officer Foundation, just on the Hill moments ago. Let's watch.
The reduction in resources and low morale increased mental health problems for law enforcement officers. The combination of these factors led to overwhelming stress on these police officers, which resulted in higher suicide rates. The Defund the Police movement is responsible for...
He's going in detail there. And he went on, I've been watching it all morning, he went on to say, just as you have indicated, Jason, fixing it is not all that hard, but you can't just flip the switch.
Yeah, and you can't simply just have these press conferences and hearings and think that it's okay, that everything will be okay now that you've addressed the problem by simply getting in front of a camera, because that's not what's going to happen. And it's going to take a very long time to turn the tide here. You have a culture now of lawlessness. The criminals have been emboldened, and they know it. They know the law. They know all the changes, and they know all the cops have been demoralized, and they are taking advantage. And if all of a sudden, let's just say you fully funded every single department in this country, it's still going to take a lot of work to walk back the culture. And then on top of that, the political realities of changing the laws, pushing out the politicians who are responsible for them or refuse to take them out. That's going to take a long time. But at the end of the day, what I hope happens, and I'm so glad that you did this, because as you were coming in, you've got the names of the fallen officers there, and I saw Dom Collada up there. He's a deputy. He was a deputy here in Washington State who was murdered on the job. And we should know the names of every single person who was killed, and we should hear from the people who are responsible for the policies that led to their murder, why they had to die. Tell me why they had to die. Tell me why deputies Matthew Yates of Ohio or Edward Petrie of Kentucky had to die just in the last few weeks.
Yeah, know their names. That's why we scroll them. And thank you for that personal touch in your story, your connection with one of those officers from your community. So sorry for your community's loss. You're right. We have to get started with this now, because it will take a while, but we can do it. We've got to protect our law enforcement officers. Jason, thank you. Parents are up in arms. The outrage over a Maryland school district's gender identity disclosure guidelines has them angry. The district bars teachers and staff from telling parents about gender transitions of their own children if the parents don't support that decision. The same thing is happening in some schools in Virginia and Wisconsin. And more gender identity controversy, this time at the federal level. The Biden administration yesterday proposed a rule to expand federal health care for transgender people. The proposal reignites concerns over religious freedom for healthcare professionals. Some worry they could be forced to perform controversial procedures over moral objections. Jason, I'm coming back to you on this separate topic now and get your top line thoughts.
Yeah, so there are two different issues here, right? So you have, on one hand, teachers who think they know better than parents. They think that they are now the parents, that is their responsibility to mold these kids into, activists that they'd like them to be. But at the end of the day, policies like that basically separate the kid from the parent is counterproductive. It hurts these children. The best thing that you can do for any kid, including kids who are going through some emotionally tough times, they're having feelings that they don't know quite how to cope with, the best way to treat them is to strengthen the family, strengthen the relationships that they have with their mothers and fathers. That's the best way to handle them. And then on the other hand, of course, you have the federal government coming in and deciding that we're going to essentially force gender-conforming care, gender-inclusive care, despite the fact that maybe doctors don't think that's the right move. There is this societal pressure to give in to the whims of every single patient when that might not be the case for them, that they won't actually be served. How about we allow doctors to be doctors?
You know, one of the questions that I've had all along is that if somebody else is making for your child the decision about physical transition with regard to transgender issues, if that child in later life decides that they were ruined by that decision emotionally and wish it hadn't happened, and I've interviewed people who say that that's their story, then are those teachers and administrators and federal officials on the hook for paying for whatever is necessary, the counseling, the support for that now older child or adult? Because as parents, we're responsible for our children until one of us parts this earth.
Yeah, it's really easy to parent someone else's kid when you don't have to take any of the responsibilities for the damage that gets done either in the short term or the long term. I would hope that they would have to pay some sort of price for that, but of course they're not going to. They get away with this kind of stuff, and they're using these kids as props to forward their own gender identity activism, their own activism here on behalf of these kids that they're using essentially as props. It's obviously wrong. And there have been so many times people have gone through transitions or almost gone through transitions, came back and said, yeah, that was the wrong decision for me, and I wish there was an adult in my life to tell me no. But right now, we have a dearth of those parents and or teachers because a lot of them are too scared to say anything for fear of being bullied as a transphobe.
Yeah, I'm also really concerned about somebody stepping in between me and my child. I'm feeding this child, I'm housing this child. This is my responsibility, my loved one. And yet they want to tell me that how we work out our decisions within the privacy of our home don't fit their politics or their idea of what freedom should look like, I suppose.
Yeah, you're in charge. You're the one who, at the end of the day, cares most about your kids, and that will always be the case. Family will always care more about their children than a teacher, especially a teacher who might be driven by some partisan agenda.
Jason Rantz, appreciate you being in focus on all of it. Thank you very much.
Subscribe to the Fox News YouTube channel to catch our nightly opens, stories that are changing the world and changing your life. From Tucker Carlson tonight.